Did you know a religion whose followers once spanned from Spain to China, rivaling Christianity and Buddhism, now has only a handful of adherents? Or that an emperor tried to convert the entire Roman Empire to the worship of an unconquered sun god, nearly succeeding? Imagine a form of Christianity so widespread it reached the imperial courts of China and the remote corners of India, centuries before Western missionaries. And picture this: the ideas of heaven, hell, a final savior, and a cosmic battle between good and evil were common currency in a Persian faith long before they echoed in other major world religions. These aren't what-ifs. They are glimpses into faiths that stood on the very brink of global dominance. Number 11. Samaritanism. Ancient rivals with a shared book, the Samaritans. You might know them from a famous parable, but their story is way bigger and way older. Picture this: a people who claim they are the true descendants of the ancient Israelites from the northern tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. They hold that their version of the Torah, the Samaritan Pentateuch, is the original, unaltered one. For centuries, they were a significant population in the Holy Land, with their temple on Mount Gerizim, which they consider the holiest place on earth, not Jerusalem. Their numbers were once in the hundreds of thousands, possibly over 1 million, during the Roman-Byzantine period. They had communities not just in Samaria, but also in Egypt, Damascus, and even as far as Rome. They were a force to be reckoned with, sometimes clashing with their Jewish neighbors over religious practices and holy sites. Think of it like a major fork in the road of Abrahamic faith, happening way back. They had their own high priests, their own distinct script for Hebrew, and a rich liturgical tradition. So what happened? A series of unfortunate events, really? Revolts against Byzantine rule in the 5th and 6th centuries were brutally suppressed. These weren't small skirmishes. They were desperate attempts to maintain their identity and religious freedom, and the crackdowns were devastating. Thousands were killed or enslaved, and their religious sites were often destroyed or converted. Then came the rise of Islam. While initially some Semitic groups found common ground, over time, pressures to convert, combined with ongoing political instability and economic hardships, led to a steady decline in their numbers. They weren't wiped out, but they were massively reduced. It's like a giant tree that once covered a huge area, slowly shrinking down to a small grove. Today, the Samaritan community is tiny, numbering only around 800 to 900 people, living mostly near Mount Gerizim and Holon in Israel. They still practice their ancient faith, a living window into a past where they were a major player in the religious landscape of the Middle East. They almost became a parallel Abrahamic world religion. Number 10. Atenism. The sun disk revolution. That flickered out. Imagine an entire ancient civilization, one of the most powerful on earth, suddenly told to abandon its gods. Not just some gods, but a LL of them, except one. This happened in Egypt, around 1350 BC. The pharaoh Amenhotep IV decided that everyone should worship the Aten, the disk of the sun, as the supreme and pretty much only creator god. He even changed his name to Akhenaten, meaning effective for Aten. This wasn't just a minor tweak to the existing religion. It was radical. Akhenaten closed down the temples of other gods, especially Amun-Ra, who was super powerful and whose priests had immense wealth and influence. He moved the capital city from Thebes to a brand new city he built from scratch in the desert, Akhetaten, Razan of Aten. Modern-day Amarnath. Think of it as a religious and political reset button of epic proportions. The art style changed too, becoming more naturalistic, even showing the royal family in unusually intimate and informal poses. Some scholars even see hints of monotheism, or at least henotheism, worshipping one god without denying others might exist for other people, which was a massive leap for its time. For about 17 years, Atenism was the state religion. The empire was vast, stretching into Nubia and the Levant. If this had stuck, and if Egypt had continued its imperial expansion with his new, somewhat universalist vision of a single sun god for all, who knows how the religious map of the world might have looked? Aten was presented as a universal god, whose light shone on all peoples, not just Egyptians. This had global potential. But it didn't stick. After Akhenaten died, the old priesthoods, particularly of Amun-Ra, came roaring back. His son, Tutankhamun. Yes, that Tutankhamun, originally Tutankhaten, reversed the changes. Akhenaten's monuments were defaced, his city was abandoned, and his name was even erased from king lists. It was a thorough attempt to pretend he and Atenism never happened. The revolution was too much, too soon, and too tied to one matic but controversial ruler. Flickered brightly, showed a glimpse of a very different path, and then was snuffed out. Number 9. Mazdakism. The ancient communist utopia that shook an empire. Picture this. 5th century Persia, the mighty Sasanian Empire. Prophet named Mazdak shows up preaching some pretty wild ideas for the time. He wasn't just talking about spiritual stuff. He was talking about a radical social overhaul. Mazdak, building on some earlier Zoroastrian ideas, declared that things like private property and the unequal distribution of wealth, and even wives, were the source of all strife and evil in the world. His solution: share everything, yes, everything. He preached that God had provided the means of subsistence on earth for all people to share equally, but the strong had oppressed the weak, leading to inequality. So he advocated for pacifism, vegetarianism, some sources say, and a kind of communal living where property, and according to some hostile sources, even women, were to be held in common. The goal was to remove greed, envy, and anger, the demons that caused suffering. It was like an ancient version of communism, mixed with religious asceticism. And people loved it, especially the poor and disenfranchised. The movement gained massive traction. For a while, Mazdak even had the ear of the Sasanian king Kavad, the first Kavad, possibly seeing a way to curb the power of the nobles, and Zoroastrian clergy supported Mazdakism for a time. Imagine that, an emperor backing a movement that wanted to abolish private property. During this period, storehouses of the rich were opened, land was redistributed, and the social hierarchy was turned upside down. It was a full-blown revolution. This could have dramatically reshaped Persian society, and given Persia's influence, potentially spread much further. A major empire embracing proto-communist, pacifist ideals, that's a game changer. But as you can guess, the powerful nobles and the orthodox Zoroastrian clergy were not amused at all. They saw Mazdakism as a dangerous heresy that threatened the very fabric of society and their power. Eventually, they managed to turn King Kavad I against the Mazdakites. Or perhaps his son Khosrow I was the main driver of the suppression after Kavad. What followed was a brutal crackdown. Mazdak and thousands, possibly tens of thousands, of his followers were massacred around 524 or 528 CE. The movement was crushed, driven underground. While some Mazdakite ideas survived and influenced later Islamic sects, its chance to become a dominant empire-backed faith that could have spread globally was violently extinguished. It was too radical, too fast, and it challenged too many powerful people. Number 8. Tengrism. The sky god of the world's largest empire. Imagine a belief system that was the spiritual backbone of the largest contiguous land empire in human history. That was Tengrism, the faith of Genghis Khan and the vast Mongol Empire. At its heart, Tengrism is all about reverence for Tengri, the eternal blue sky, the supreme deity. It also involves ancestor worship, shamanism, and a deep connection to nature. There's no complex theology, no holy book dictated by a prophet, no elaborate temples in the early days. It was a faith that fit the nomadic lifestyle of the steppes perfectly. When Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes in the early 13th century, Tengrism became the state ideology. The Khans believed they ruled by the will of Tengri. This divine mandate fueled their incredible conquests, which stretched from Eastern Europe to the Sea of Japan, from Siberia down to Southeast Asia and the Middle East. The Mongols were generally tolerant of other religions within their empire: Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Taoists, as long as they prayed for the Khan. This policy actually helped them govern their diverse territories. This religious tolerance, combined with the sheer scale of the Mongol Empire, gave Tengrism a unique platform. The Mongol elite had decided to actively proselytize Tengrism, or if it had developed a more structured missionary form, it could have potentially spread far and wide, absorbing elements from the faiths it encountered. Some Khans did lean towards certain faiths, like Kublai Khan embracing Tibetan Buddhism, or the Ilkhanate in Persia converting to Islam. That was also its almost. Tengrism, in its original form, was deeply tied to the Mongolian identity and their traditional way of life. It didn't have a strong missionary impulse or a codified scripture that could be easily translated and spread among sedentary populations. As the Mongol Empire fragmented into different khanates, the Golden Horde in Russia, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Yuan dynasty in China, the Mongol rulers and elites in these regions gradually adopted the dominant local religions. The Yuan adopted Buddhism. The Ilkhanate and Golden Horde eventually adopted Islam. So, while the Mongol Empire briefly united a huge chunk of the globe, Tengrism itself didn't conquer hearts and minds in the same way. It remained largely the faith of the Mongol people, and while it still exists today in various forms, especially in Mongolia and parts of Siberia, its moment on the world stage as the faith of a global superpower passed as the empire itself dissolved and its descendants assimilated. Number 7. Gnosticism. The secret knowledge that almost redefined early divinity. Imagine a version of early spirituality where salvation didn't come from just faith or good works, but from gnosis, a secret divine knowledge. This was the core of Gnosticism, a super diverse and fascinating collection of religious ideas that flourished in the first few centuries. CE, around the same time, early Christianity was taking shape. It wasn't a single unified religion, but more like a spectrum of beliefs, drawing from Jewish, Christian, and Greek philosophical traditions. Gnostics had some pretty mind-bending ideas. Many believed that the material world we live in wasn't created by the true, good God, but by a lesser, flawed, or even malevolent deity called the demiurge. The real God was remote, unknowable, and perfect. Humans, they thought, had a divine spark, a piece of this true God trapped within their imperfect material bodies. The goal was to awaken the spark through gnosis, escape the material prison, and return to the divine realm. Think of it like a spiritual jailbreak. Some Gnostic groups had their own gospels and scriptures, like the Gospel of Thomas or the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which offered different perspectives on Jesus and his teachings than the ones that became part of the New Testament. Some saw Jesus not as a divine being who died for sins, but as a divine messenger who came to impart this secret knowledge. They were influential. Gnostic teachers attracted many followers across the Roman Empire and beyond, from Egypt to Rome, Syria to Gaul. They were intellectuals, mystics, and they offered complex answers to big questions about evil, suffering, and the nature of reality. So why isn't Gnosticism a major world religion today? Well, it faced intense opposition from what became Orthodox Christianity. Early church fathers like Irenaeus and Tertullian saw Gnosticism as a dangerous heresy. They wrote extensively against it, arguing that it twisted scripture and led people astray. Gnosticism was also very diverse, without a central authority or unified structure, which made it harder to organize and defend itself. Plus, the emphasis on secret knowledge meant it wasn't always looking to convert the masses in the same way as other faiths. As Orthodox Christianity gained power, especially after it became the state religion of the Roman Empire, Gnostic groups were increasingly suppressed. Their texts were destroyed. Many were only rediscovered in the 20th century, like the Nag Hammadi Library in Egypt, and their communities dwindled. While Gnostic ideas continued to pop up in various mystical and esoteric traditions throughout history, its chance to become a dominant form of early Christianity or a major independent spiritual path for the Roman world and beyond faded under pressure. It was a path of secret wisdom that, for many, remained too secret or was actively hidden. Number 6. The cult of Isis. The Egyptian goddess who conquered hearts across an empire. Long before celebrity, culture, there was Isis. She was an ancient Egyptian goddess, but her appeal became so massive that her worship spread all the way across the Hellenistic world and then the Roman Empire. We're talking temples from Britain to the Black Sea, from Germany to North Africa. She was a huge deal for centuries. What was her appeal? Isis was a goddess for everyone. Originally, in Egypt, she was known as the devoted wife of Osiris and mother of Horus, a powerful magician and a symbol of queenship and motherhood. But as her cult spread, she became a kind of universal goddess, absorbing qualities of many other local deities. She was seen as a compassionate mother figure, a protector of sailors, a healer of the sick, a bringer of civilization, and a promise of salvation and eternal life through her mystery rites. People loved her because she seemed to understand human suffering and offer real comfort and hope. Her worship often involved elaborate festivals, processions with music and chanting, and secret initiation ceremonies, the mysteries of Isis. These mysteries, though we don't know all the details, they were secret after all, probably involved purification rituals, dramatic reenactments of her myths, like her search for the scattered body of her murdered husband Osiris, and a promise of a blessed afterlife for initiates. It was personal, emotional, and offered a direct connection to the divine. Think of it as a spiritual experience that really resonated with people in a changing, often chaotic world. So, with all this popularity, why didn't the worship of Isis become a lasting global faith? For a long time, it coexisted with other pagan cults and even early Christianity. Roman emperors sometimes supported her cult. Sometimes they were suspicious of. However, as Christianity grew in power and influence, particularly after becoming the state religion of the Roman Empire in the 4th century CE, things changed. Official policy began to favor Christianity exclusively. Pagan temples, including those of Isis, were gradually closed down, sometimes violently. Funding was cut off, and public practice of non-Christian rites was eventually outlawed. The followers of Isis didn't have a unified political or military force to resist this systemic shift. While her influence lingered, woven into folklore and even some aspects of other faiths, her organized cult slowly faded away. She was a goddess who offered so much to so many, but ultimately, the tide of history, driven by the rise of another exclusive monotheistic faith, swept her grand public worship away. Number 5. Arianism. Christianity that almost conquered Christianity. Imagine a time when the most powerful emperors were Christian, but the Christianity they supported was very different from what most Christians believe today. This was the reality with Arianism, a hugely influential Christian theological view that dominated much of the Roman Empire, especially in the 4th century CE. It was so big, it almost became the form of Christianity. The whole thing started with a priest from Alexandria named Arius. Around 318 CE, he taught that God the Son, Jesus Christ, was not co-eternal and co-equal with God the Father. Instead, he believed the Son was created by the Father, meaning there was a time when the Son did not exist. He was still divine, super important, but subordinate to the Father. There was a time when the Son was not, was one of their key phrases. This might sound like a subtle theological point now, but back then it was explosive. It touched the very nature of God and Christ. Arianism spread like wildfire. It appealed to many because it seemed to offer a more logical, less mysterious understanding of the relationship between the Father and Son, aligning with some philosophical ideas of the time that emphasized the absolute oneness and transcendence of the ultimate God. Several Roman emperors, like Constantius II, became Arian or sympathetic to it. Arian bishops held powerful positions, and Arian missionaries most famously. Ulfilas converted entire Germanic tribes like the Goths, Vandals, and Lombards to Arian Christianity. These tribes then spread Arianism as they migrated and conquered parts of the Western Roman Empire. For a while, it looked like Arianism might win the day. So, what stopped it from becoming the dominant global form of Christianity? Intense theological opposition, for starters. Thinkers like Athanasius of Alexandria fiercely defended the idea that the Son was homoousios, of the same substance as the Father, meaning fully divine and co-eternal. The First Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, convened by Emperor Constantine, condemned Arianism and formulated the Nicene Creed, which affirmed the Orthodox view. But the debate didn't end there. It raged for decades, with emperors and councils sometimes supporting one side, sometimes the other. It was a real tug-of-war for the soul of Christianity. Eventually, the Orthodox Nicene view, championed by powerful theologians and emperors like Theodosius I, who made Nicene Christianity the state religion in 380 CE, gained the upper hand within the Roman Empire. The Germanic Arian kingdoms in the West eventually converted to Nicene Catholic Christianity, often for political reasons, like the Franks under Clovis, or were conquered by Nicene powers, like the Vandals and Ostrogoths by the Byzantines. Arianism. Once a mighty river, slowly dried up or merged into the main current of Nicene orthodoxy. It was a battle of ideas that profoundly shaped what Christianity is today, and it was a very close call. Number 4. Mithraism. The secret soldiers, god of the Roman Empire. Imagine a mysterious religion popular with Roman soldiers, spread all across the vast Roman Empire, from Britain to Syria. Its followers met in underground temples, shared ritual meals, and revered a god born from a rock who famously slew a sacred bull. This was Mithraism. And for a few centuries, it was a major spiritual force. The central figure was Mithras, often depicted wearing a Phrygian cap, slaying a bull in an act called the Tauroctony. This scene, packed with astrological symbolism, a dog, snake, scorpion, raven, and sometimes lions and a cup are usually present, was the focal point of every Mithraeum, their underground temples. These temples were small, cave-like structures, designed to mimic the cave where Mithras performed his bull-slaying feat. They were intimate spaces, fitting only a few dozen worshippers. Mithraism was a mystery cult, meaning its core teachings and rituals were kept secret, revealed only to initiates through 7 grades of initiation, each with its own symbols and rites. It emphasized discipline, loyalty, and brotherhood, qualities that really appealed to Roman soldiers, merchants, and even some imperial administrators. This military and mercantile connection helped it spread rapidly along trade routes and with troop movements. Archaeologists have found hundreds of Mithraea all over the Roman world. It offered a sense of belonging, a moral code, and perhaps a promise of salvation or a better afterlife, though the exact theology is still debated by scholars because no Mithraic scriptures have survived. All we have are the temple ruins, inscriptions, and artistic depictions. It was a very personal and experiential faith. Think of it as an exclusive club with cosmic significance. So, why didn't Mithraism, with its dedicated followers and wide reach, become a global religion? Several factors played a role. Its secrecy and exclusivity, while appealing to some, also limited its potential for mass conversion. It was also primarily a male-only cult, which naturally restricted its appeal to half the population. And like other pagan cults, it faced growing competition from another religion that was also spreading rapidly and offered a universal message: Christianity. As Christianity gained imperial favor in the 4th century, Mithraism, along with other traditional Roman religions, came under pressure. Temples were abandoned or destroyed. There wasn't a single Mithraic church to organize a defense. While its symbols and ideas might have subtly influenced other traditions, the organized worship of Mithras eventually faded out. It was a powerful empire-spanning faith that ultimately succumbed to changing religious tides and its own inherent limitations for broader appeal. Number 3. Nestorianism, the Church of the East. Christian wave that reached China first. Forget what you think you know about early Christian expansion. Long before Western missionaries set sail, a branch of Christianity known as the Church of the East, sometimes called Nestorianism, had spread incredibly far all the way across Asia from its heartland in Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq and Syria, through Persia, Central Asia, India, and even into the heart of China. We're talking Christian communities thriving along the Silk Road by the 7th century. The Nestorian label came from Nestorius, a 5th century patriarch of Constantinople, whose theological views on the nature of Christ, emphasizing a distinction between Christ's human and divine natures, were condemned as heretical. At the Council of Ephesus in 431 CE, his followers and the churches in the Persian Sasanian Empire that largely agreed with his theological leanings, or at least found them more compatible with their own pre-existing traditions, became organizationally separate from the Church in the Roman Empire. Freed from, and often persecuted by, the Byzantine Roman Empire, the Church of the East looked eastward. And boy, did it travel. They were incredible missionaries and merchants. They established bishoprics and monasteries across the Persian Empire, which was often a rival to Rome, so being distinct from Roman Christianity was sometimes an advantage. They translated scriptures into local languages like Syriac, Sogdian, and even Chinese. In China, during the Tang Dynasty, 618 to 907 CE, they were known as Jinjiao, the luminous religion, and were allowed to build monasteries, translate text, and even gained some imperial favor for a while. The Zion Stele, a famous stone monument from 781 CE, describes the arrival of Nestorian missionaries in 635 CE and the flourishing of their communities in China. They also reached India, establishing what would become part of the St. Thomas Christian community in Klea. Their influence stretched into Mongolia, where several Turkic and Mongol tribes converted. Imagine Christian prayers echoing in monasteries from Baghdad to Beijing, centuries before Marco Polo. This was a truly vast Christian network. So what happened to this massive early Christian presence in Asia? Several things. The rise of Islam in the 7th century changed the landscape. While Christians were often treated as people of the book and tolerated, they faced restrictions and pressures to convert over centuries, leading to a slow decline in their original heartlands. In China, a major imperial persecution of foreign religions in 845 CE, primarily aimed at Buddhism but affecting others, severely damaged the Church of the East there. Then came the devastating Mongol invasions of the 13th and 14th centuries, particularly by Tamerlane, in the late 14th century. Timur, a Muslim conqueror, was particularly harsh on Christian communities in Persia and Central Asia, leading to widespread massacres and the destruction of churches. This was a catastrophic blow. While scattered communities survived, and some still exist today, like the Assyrian Church of the East and the Chaldean Catholic Church, which later reunited with Rome, the vast network that once stretched across Asia was largely broken. It was a Christian world that almost was, a testament to an incredible early global vision that faced immense historical pressures. Number 2. Zoroastrianism. The ancient Persian faith of light and shadow. Imagine a religion that gave the world concepts like a single supreme God, a cosmic battle between good and evil, an evil antagonist, a devil figure, angels and demons, a coming savior, a final judgment, heaven and hell. Sounds familiar, right? Many of these ideas first took clear shape in Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest continuously practiced religions, founded by the prophet Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, in ancient Iran, possibly as early as 1500 BC, or even earlier. At its core, Zoroastrianism teaches the worship of Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, the creator of all good things. Posing Ahura Mazda is Angra Mainyu, or Ahriman, the destructive spirit, the source of evil and chaos. Human beings have free will to choose between good, Asha, or truth and order, and evil, Druj, or the lie. Life is a battlefield for these forces, and humans play a crucial role through their thoughts, words, and deeds. Fire is a central symbol, representing purity, light, and Ahura Mazda's presence. Zoroastrianism became the state religion of 3 mighty Persian empires. The Achaemenids, think Cyrus the Great, Darius, the Parthians, and the Sasanians. For over 1,000 years, it was the dominant faith of a vast territory stretching from parts of Egypt and Greece to India. This imperial backing gave it immense prestige and influence. Cyrus the Great, for example, is famed for allowing the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, an act of tolerance, perhaps influenced by Zoroastrian principles. During this long period, Zoroastrian ideas spread and likely influenced other nascent religions in the Near East, including Judaism and subsequently Christianity and Islam. The idea of a linear history progressing towards a final apocalyptic battle and renovation of the world was a powerful new concept. So, with such a profound impact and long imperial history, why isn't Zoroastrianism a global faith on the scale of its Abrahamic descendants? Turning point was the Arab conquest of the Sasanian Persian Empire in the 7th century CE. While Zoroastrians were initially considered people of the book and allowed to practice their faith, they faced increasing discrimination, social and economic pressures, and sporadic persecution over the centuries. Many converted to Islam, A significant group of Zoroastrians, seeking to preserve their faith, fled Persia and migrated to India, where they became known as the Parsis, meaning Persians. They thrived there and have maintained their ancient traditions. In Iran, small communities also managed to survive despite centuries of hardship. But the loss of state support, combined with ongoing pressures, meant that Zoroastrianism, which once shaped empires and influenced the spiritual landscape of a huge part of the world, gradually dwindled in numbers. It didn't have the same kind of universal missionary drive in its later periods as some other faiths, and political events critically curtailed its dominance. It remains a living faith, a testament to endurance, but its period of potential global religious leadership passed with the fall of the last Zoroastrian empire. Number 1. Manichaeism. The religion of light that stretched from Spain to China. Imagine a religion so compelling, so well organized, and so widespread that for a time it seriously rivaled Christianity, Buddhism, and Zoroastrianism for the spiritual allegiance of millions across a vast swathe of the ancient and medieval world. This was Manichaeism, founded by a Persian prophet named Mani, via the 3rd century CE, and it almost took over. Mani, born in Mesopotamia, declared himself the apostle of light and the final prophet in a line that included Zoroaster, Buddha, and Jesus. He claimed to be bringing the complete and universal religion that perfected and superseded all previous faiths. His core teaching was a radical dualism, a cosmic struggle between a good spiritual world of light and an evil material world of darkness. Humans, he taught, were battlegrounds for these forces, possessing a divine spark of light trapped within their dark material bodies. Salvation came through gnosis, knowledge, of this divine spark, and by living an ascetic life to liberate it. Manichaeism was incredibly organized. Mani himself wrote several sacred books and sent out missionaries known as elect, the celibate, the Gecelibate, the Jeshurian leaders, and hearers, the lay followers, far and wide. His religion was designed to be universal, deliberately incorporating elements from Christianity, Zoroastrianism, and Buddhism to appeal to different cultures. They were masters of adaptation and translation. Manichaean art was also stunning, with beautifully illuminated manuscripts, and it spread like nothing else. To the west, it reached Egypt, North Africa. St. Augustine was a Manichaean hearer for 9 years before converting to Christianity, Spain, Italy, and Gaul. To the east, it spread through Persia, Central Asia, along the Silk Road, into India, and all the way to China, where it survived for centuries, sometimes known as the religion of light, or Minjiao. For a while in the 8th and 9th centuries, Manichaeism even became the state religion of the Uyghur Khaganate, a powerful Turkic empire in Central Asia. Think about that, a faith born in Persia becoming the official religion of a Central Asian empire. So why did this seemingly unstoppable religion eventually fade into near oblivion? Precisely because it was so successful and seen as such a threat. In the Roman Empire, once Christianity became dominant, Manichaeans faced severe persecution as heretics. Emperors issued edicts against them. Their books were burned, and their leaders were executed. In Persia, after an initial period of tolerance, the powerful Zoroastrian clergy also turned against them, and Mani himself was martyred around 274 or 277 CE. In China, while it persisted for a long time, it also faced periods of persecution, especially when foreign religions were suppressed. Despite its sophisticated theology, its powerful missionary drive, and its adaptability, Manichaeism was caught between larger state-backed religions that eventually had more power to suppress it. It was too successful for its own good, perhaps. It didn't have a lasting homeland empire to protect it in the long run. Today, Manichaeism is virtually extinct, though its ideas subtly influenced various Gnostic, Christian, and Islamic mystical movements. It stands as perhaps the greatest example of a religion that had all the ingredients for global status and came incredibly close, only to be systematically dismantled by its rivals.